Hey everybody, today we're going to be trying out a Hollow Knight Silksong Steel Soul run. I figured that since I've gotten through a pretty big chunk of the game and have at least beat it enough to unlock Steel Soul, it might be fun to try a challenge run since I haven't seen many other people doing challenges like this quite yet. My thought was generally just to be able to go through the game, talk about a few things that I thought were interesting, just go through, talk about my general strategy, and see how far I'm able to get. And hopefully either take a break here when I've played for a good enough chunk or until I die. So, I guess we'll see what happens. Just for reference, as I'm going through this, I'm probably going to be skipping a pretty significant portion of, like, NPC dialogues, lore, stuff like that. I'm going to mainly just be going to try to get, as much of the game completed as I can. The goal will be to hopefully eventually get to 100% completion, but obviously this game's been pretty difficult if you've seen much about it. And if not, also, clearly, spoiler warning, because I'm going to be going through and talking about things which are much later game as I go through this, probably just explaining some of my thought processes and plans as I go through to see, I guess, what I can get as the strongest possible build. Most of the starting area is going to be pretty slow and simple, just finding a few extra materials and resources to help out soon whenever we're able to actually get the other components needed to use them. Some of the first ones that I was thinking of going for were a couple charms in particular, or tools. For example, there's one that'll let me get a little bit of my silk back each time that I get hit by an enemy or take damage in any way. That's not a super crazy ability, especially because it doesn't give very much silk each time that you get hit by an enemy, but it can be enough to just occasionally make a little bit of a difference. That and typically some other protective tools are going to be my first order. As I'm going through this first area here, I also just want to keep an eye out for these little green things around here called mossberries. These I'll be able to trade to an NPC for one of those first, the tools. The one particularly that I mentioned will give me a little bit of silk back on getting hit. Terribly interesting going on here until the first boss, so most of this is just going to be trying to make sure that I get all the little extra secret bits, odds and ends around here, just so I don't have to backtrack quite as much later as I'm playing forward. There's going to be a bit of backtracking here because there's a few different components you can get. Extra resources early on. as many of these rosary beads as I can early on is going to be pretty essential, just considering that it takes not a super long time, but not every enemy in this game drops rosary beads, which are your main form of currency. And so making sure that you're able to get some of these early on before you're getting to those areas where enemies will drop them can mean that you have a bit of a head start on unlocking certain things, like fast travel systems when we actually get to that point, certain trinkets, charms, tools, pretty much everything. So even having a little bit extra just this early on isn't going to make too much of a difference, especially once we get to a point where we're fighting enough enemies to start getting a lot of these rosaries, but every little bit counts. Boss, which is pretty reminiscent of the first boss of the first Hollow Knight game too, or I guess the second. The boss in Hollow Knight that I'm referring to is the Vengefly King, which generally is a pretty simple boss. It can occasionally summon little flies around it, and otherwise pretty much just does little dashes towards you. This boss is pretty reminiscent, a little bit faster, and can summon enemies that will roll on the ground instead of just flying in the air. But overall, still a pretty simple fight and nothing too much to worry about. Sometimes they can be a little tedious, so trying to get through them fast, especially when you don't have many other DPS options like spells or tools, can be a little tricky.
Hey, come on. Hey, look, Ababa. Orala. Fa, you ma.
Benny Frank.
Orala.
Megina Fora.
Prataka.
Kaspin.
Mimiro. Memero.
Okay, and now we should be able to make our way to the first settlement of the game, which is going to offer a few fairly useful things. Most of them I'm not going to be able to afford for a little bit, but it's alright, because it still offers a save point and just a good place to get extra items in the near future. So the first merchant will be here. I'm not going to have enough rosaries to afford anything quite yet, so talking to this NPC to make sure that the quest board gets finished sooner is going to be pretty important. It doesn't do much early game in terms of getting you a ton of items, but it can definitely help get you some extra money, which is quite nice.
Benny Frank.
Täällä käy rivenda.
especially when you don't have anything else
Täällä
really to
käy
equip.
rivenda. Memoko.
Going to that merchant with some extra money definitely can help you get a good start, especially if you're trying to make sure that you have some extra utility in the early game before you have to use your upgrades. Charms and trinkets are pretty much your best way to get it done. Tools, you can get a few of them early game, but really not that many, so trying to get your arsenal a little more padded out is one of the first things you really want to do as you work towards some of the bosses and other stuff. Most of these shards that I'm picking up right now don't really have much of a benefit because again, I don't have access to tools quite yet. But the thought is that one of the earlier quests in the game requires them, so it's good to also pick them up whenever I can. Down here, I'm pretty sure is one of the first encounters in the game. Luckily, all these rooms, though I've played it a few times, aren't really much of a big worry. So just getting through them, taking my time is one of the most important things. Being able to play it safe is also going to be important. Since you heal 3 masks at a time in this game, typically you don't have to worry quite as much about healing, you know, each individual mask like you would have in the first game. But you should still pick your times carefully because enemies in this game tend to attack quick and fairly often. So it's important to make sure you're getting your healing times right so you aren't just losing more health than you're getting back. It's a bit of a balancing act, but typically it's not all too difficult. Later game there's also an upgrade which allows you to heal faster, and that's arguably one of the best utility trinkets in the game. Buy some extra items. I don't think they're here quite yet, but in the next area or so, I think that's where it starts to kick up. One of the most important things that I'm going to be going for, besides just random various little trinkets and other things, is going to be the ability to dash and sprint. The dash is going to be one of the most important things to actually be able to dodge enemies, and it's going to be one of the best evasive abilities that I have for a pretty significant while. So making sure that I'm able to get it and have it, you know, usable is going to be pretty big. One of the other things in that sort of realm is going to be getting some extra masks. Because in this game, enemies tend to deal more damage on average than the first game by far. In the first game, there were a few bosses and very, very few enemy types which could actually deal any more than 1 mask of damage. But in this game, enemies typically are either able to combo you or in some other way deal 2 masks of damage to you, or just several all at once. And typically, that just makes your mask upgrades a little less meaningful individually. So typically, when you're getting maybe 6 masks as your maximum amount of health, it's not going to be as good an upgrade as you will maybe 7 masks. When you have an odd mask, it means that even if something is dealing 2 masks to you, if you're going from 5 to 6, things can still kill you in 3 hits, but going from 5 masks to 7 masks mean that things will have to take an extra hit. So that can provide a lot of extra security, and it's best to get as many of the mask shards as you can, as quickly as you can. Trying to pick up these extra little items will give me a little bit of extra money too whenever I need it, so that should be a good enough use whenever I actually get to that point. Over here will be an NPC who will give us a quest for finding hidden fleas and grubs in the first game. Currently, it's not going to do too much for us, but once we're able to get enough, it can help us to get some extra tools, some extra items, so on.
Para vost. Yanaga Muske. Para vost?
That's fine.
Pumta Osh.
Alright, there we go. So that quest is started. Should hopefully be able to give us a little bit of stuff. I think the main path is going to be to go back up and to the left. That'll not only unlock fast travel for us, it'll also bring us to the first area where enemies are really going to start dropping extra money. And after that, we'll be able to get the dash by going a little bit further. The area I'm going to have to go to is typically one of the more dangerous areas, especially for when you're just starting out the game and you don't know any of the enemy attacks. I did try to record another sorcerer run a day or so ago, after I beat the game for the first time, a few days after it came out. But unfortunately, I was pretty much completely inaudible the entire time, so trying again today. Okay, here we go. Also just doing my best to keep an eye out for any things like that where I may not have remembered rocks with rosaries in them or some other things. Soon, we should be coming upon the NPC who's able to sell maps, which is going to be one of the most important things to actually knowing where I am and keeping track of what I still need to get.
Pushanka. Goralos.
Da, fenestra.
Los kakor. Mieszko.
Alright, here we are. Most of these items aren't going to be super important right now, but getting the maps and the quill for the early game is going to do a lot for helping just to, again, keep track of where I think this is an area I've already been to. Mainly just trying to double check in case I've missed anything. Okay, seems like it. So now I'm going to be able to move to the area above the original starting town. So that'll let me get the earlier mentioned trinket, the one that'll like give me a little bit of silk back if I ever get hit. It'll also let me fight some more enemies who are actually able to drop money, which is going to be a pretty big boost. Okay, so that to the right will be the fast travel station when I'm able to actually unlock it. First, I need a spell to actually be able to break these silk strings here that are tying up the creature that lets us fast travel. Even if I'm not able to fully break them yet, though, I can go hit them a little bit just to get full-on silk. Some of these enemies that shoot projectiles can be a little tough early game when you're still learning them, but what I found is that if you run pretty much just straight at them, they'll almost always arc their projectiles right over you, so you don't actually have to worry about it as much as it might seem. They're pretty quick to figure out, but at the same time, it's just kind of a nice trick if you don't know it to help make them a little bit easier. A lot of enemies that shoot projectiles in this game, the best way to deal with them typically, you want to hit the projectiles right as they throw them. In a lot of cases, that'll actually let you pretty much hit the enemy with their own attack, which helps you take out their health a lot faster than normal. Especially later game when you have enemies who are throwing things like dual projectiles or things that have less intuitive patterns to them. That can go a really long way to helping you take out the enemy faster, and also it means you don't have to dodge the projectile when they throw it. These little lore tablets here, if you ever see these ones with little strings attached to them, later in the game you're able to get an ability which lets you play your weapon like you are. And that lets you actually unlock a different piece of lore from those tablets, which is kind of interesting. Those enemies right here don't really drop all that much money. But I figure if I'm already around here and I'm taking other things out, it's probably a good idea just to get as much money as I can so that when I go back down to the town, I'm able to get a lot more of the trinkets than I might otherwise be able to if I just skipped a lot of the enemies. And this up here should be my first ability, which will give me the spell letting me take out all of those sort of silk strands that are blocking my way. This ability should be pretty nice because it'll let me not only progress a little bit further, but it also actually lets me just deal a lot more damage to enemies from my regular attacks. While my regular attacks aren't bad, getting in a lot of extra DPS will again just be one of those things that makes some of these fights go way, way faster than they otherwise would. Which in a lot of cases, that can really make a difference. Especially because in many cases I found in this game, the first Hollow Knight you could really store up a whole lot of your soul, and that would let you be able to heal, and you could still cast spells while not really having to worry about your stockpile after a while. Silksong is a really good story just because you need to actually save a whole lot of silk in order to be able to heal, and your spells, while they aren't terribly expensive, definitely takes away from that, especially early game before you increase your maximum amount of silk. This NPC, I'm not able to do anything with quite yet, but I should be able to in just a minute. This is the NPC who will take those green moss berries that I've been collecting and give me a charm from them. And this here should be the last one that I need. You can trade more of them with the NPC later for extra money, but right now I'm more worried about the trinket than anything else.
Hello, Grentavren.
Fördastama.
Endomek.
Temirian.
Brenamin.
Okay, and this NPC will give you this quest. I've already collected all the items from it,
Hello,
so I'm already able to finish it.
Nesvir.
Oh, Shomanel. Endomek. Shomanel.
Alright, there's the first chunk. Okay, so I don't really have much I can do right now in terms of a lot of my abilities, besides just my regular stuff, but I am able to at least equip a few of these things while I'm here. Going down this way real quick should let me unlock a shortcut down to the main town. And in a minute I'll be able to go back and unlock my fast travel.
Bren.
Here, I believe, is where I will need to go in a minute. Here we are. So this area here will just be a way to get back to the town faster. What I'm also going to try to do here is go back to the main town and get a different trinket, and that should let me automatically pick up rosary beads without having to actually go out of my way to collect them. Which should make, you know, dealing with everything else a little bit easier to focus on. Here, though, I can get a little bit of extra money, which probably won't do much for me, but it could mean that I'm able to buy even one more thing early on, which, again, just could help with having a little bit of security. Here, I think, may be the bench. Nope. Never mind. much shorter time, but it's also pretty necessary to consider the difficulty spike. And the other thing is that means that typically if you want to, if you're able to, not heal unless you're missing the maximum amount of masks that a full heal will revive. It's not really super important, but it can help you optimize, especially because since it's all at once, if you miss, you're wasting a whole lot more than if you just, you know, made sure you got all of your heals in at once.
Ren.
Pesca.
Down here, there's one more fly that has a moss berry that you can try to take out without falling. With any luck, this should be pretty quick. And without luck, it's going to take a lot of going up and down. And I miss. But since I got the elevator, it should be pretty quick to get back up. Plus, I should be able to get a few items
Oh
real quick.
boy, yeah.
The other thing is, since in Steel Soul, I don't really have to worry about dying, I don't really need to worry about any of these rosary strings, which normally lose me money, but make sure that I would keep all my rosaries on dying. There's an NPC in this game who offers you an item called a Silk Eater, and it'll automatically generate them for you over time. And what that normally does is whenever you die, you'll drop a cocoon, and using a Silk Eater means that you'll automatically collect your cocoon after you die if you use one. Since in this game, since in the original Hollow Knight, there was an NPC who you could do a very similar thing with to help you get your shade back, missed again. Essentially, the NPC would bring you your shade back if you were to give them a rancid egg, which you could buy from another NPC. That, in Steel Soul mode, was originally replaced by another character who would instead just give you flat-out money for the rancid eggs you would bring in, that you could collect around the map too. So, I'm curious to see if in this mode, assuming I'm able to make it that far anytime soon, if they'll have a similar system where they replace the NPC. Let's see if this works. Nope. Really don't want to miss this one again. There we go. Okay. This should just be able to, again, give me a pretty small boost in rosaries, but at least a little bit extra. Next, I'm probably going to be trying to get my fast travel station unlocked, and then once that's all done, I'm going to work on getting my dash ability. It's actually luckily in the early game, before you have anything like a dash to help you get around a little bit easier, they do provide you kind of a lot of flying enemies, so if you're able to poke off that, you're able to reach some points pretty quickly. I did that pretty early in the game to get just a few extra boost cards. It wasn't very much, but it just allows you to save even a couple seconds, which will probably be useful later on if you're trying to speedrun the game. Alright, here it is. This should be another fairly quick boss. Nothing too complicated. Something, again, pretty simple. I try to use as many spells as I'm able to just to clear this card. Most of this enemy's attacks are very random, especially because originally it confused me a little bit whether or not it was just going to jump up and up, or whether it was going to jump up and go over you. The best way to tell is by looking at the height of the switch that it makes. So here, if it starts high like that, it's going to jump over you. And I assume in a minute it'll probably go lower like that. It's going to run. Alright, there we go. And this also gives us the first silk card, which means I can automatically generate one little bit of silk just by waiting. They don't do really all too much now. They make it a little bit easier to get your healing up, just because it means typically you'll only need about 8 hits on enemies instead of 9. But the more of them that you get, because there's 3 total and 1 trinket, which acts as a silk card, you can regenerate up to 4 potions of silk automatically, which is, first off, just a really good reason to be able to heal, do pretty much whatever. Especially later when you get the ability to rely on silk, that tends to be a very, very strong upgrade. Okay, and now that that's been unlocked. First off, I unlock fast travel, which is going to be really, really nice in just getting around. But also, I believe can also finish building, so I'll be able to get a little bit of extra money and potentially some items.
Oh boy, ah.
Let's see here. I don't think I have anything particularly worth buying here quite yet. Here we are. Here we go. This should be a pretty simple wish to fulfill. It's pretty much just collecting clothes off of the already insane pilgrims. And it gives me a little bit of money in return. So another thing I'm also able to do really quickly is I'm able to break these frayed rosary knots that I've already collected, and that should give me a pretty good amount of money.
Memido.
Mi offende?
Herka.
Here we are. There's really nothing much that I need this early on, but I'm probably going to get all of these things just to work towards full completion, and also just because it'll help navigate the map a little bit easier.
Yes.
Also, as I do this, I'm probably just going to try to mark down a few things that I know I'll actually need later, just so I don't forget them. So, for example, one thing I know is down here, this door I can open later when I get something called the Needle ability, That'll be really, really useful later on. Over here, I know are the wormways. That'll let me get a crest, which allows me to change my weapon style. The crest over there that you get, I don't find to be super, super useful. But it can be kind of nice sometimes. So otherwise, I don't think there's really too much to get here. So I should just be good to go back up and into the next area. Alright, so that'll be the first of 5 bells that we'll need to be able to actually get to Act 2. And a bench, which is just nice as a save point. This here lets us unlock a shortcut back to the earlier portion of the marrow that we already explored. There is an item that will be up here that I'm not able to get to quite yet, but I think there's a bit of other stuff to also get up here. So it's probably worth it to do that. To the right over here is the temple that I can't get into quite yet. And really there's just a lore tablet here. Left here is where you get another crest. It'll be opened from the other side. It's one of the harder crests to unlock in the game, considering that you cannot heal the entire time that you're trying to unlock it. There's my first death. Not a half bad attempt, but definitely could have gone a bit better. So, I guess that being said, I'll probably end it there for now. I'll have another attempt sometime in the near future. So I guess if you're interested, keep an eye out. Thanks for watching.